On their travels, our reporters are hosting young people, like this week's global team from Thailand.
How's playing? I'm 6. Currently a junior, and I live here in Bangkok, Thailand.
Or click it. We're here to help you press refresh.
Come home in 30 for a sensational 65.
In football, Real Madrid have gone top of.
Get to talk about them and friends, so it's really more of like a play-based therapy.
How many kids on a daily basis, perhaps on a weekly basis? How many students do you get to handle? Because the school is really huge, about 7.
Man, I was listening to Bangladeshi hydroponic gardening. I was listening to a reformed drug dealer turned preacher. Bangladeshi hydroponic, how do you phrase it? It's raft gardening. And now there's this kid from Thailand. Wow, that's helpful.
As of now, I currently hope to work in the UN. I think it'd be really cool to just
Well, this explains.
be in the middle of it all and try to make the world a little bit more fair.
So that's what the UN. What do you work for the UN? Which part of the UN?
I'm afraid of world leaders.
Oh,
Because I have no control over the decisions that they make, is what it feels like. And when those in power have their own political agendas.
Oh, those are big words.
In country of Benin are voting today in a presidential election in which the incumbent, Patrice Talon, is expected to win a second term. His critics have accused him of rigging the poll by disqualifying his strongest competitors. 2 people were killed in protests in the days leading up to the elections. Tim Herschel-Burns is a Benin analyst at Yale Law School in the US, and he's been telling me more about the elections.
I think the
Starting at 299.
it was one of the healthiest democracies in the region. Patrice Talon came in with a promise to serve just 1 term as president, and now Patrice Talon is running for a 2nd term. And while there are, on paper, 2 opponents, effectively this is an election without opposition.
Should the fact that Patrice Talon is Benin's richest man ring alarm bells?
I think it certainly plays a role. I think there are questions about the extent to which he has mixed his personal interests and political interests. It's the reason many people argue he got into politics. But it is also the case that, leaving aside his personal wealth, he has made enormous changes to Benin's electoral laws. There have been a number of politically motivated prosecutions, and the result is that this election is not competitive.
One of his main opponents is in prison, right?
Yes, Rekia Marugu, she has been in prison since March. She was one of the candidates who was excluded from running because of these electoral reforms. Shortly after that, she held a rally and was arrested. A judge on the court that charged her fled the country this week, saying that political pressure had compelled the court to charge Marugu, and she is just one of the candidates who is excluded from this election, and also just one of the political opponents who has faced prosecution.
So in the midst of what looks like a foregone conclusion in an election, we're being told that Benin is considered one of West Africa's strongest democracies.
Certainly until 2016, that was the case. That situation has changed alarmingly since then, and really rapidly. I think it is not fair at all to call Benin one of West Africa's strongest democracies anymore. And I think this election, which really has a predetermined outcome, is the cap on that process of democratic decline.
Is this a trend for West Africa?
You are seeing it in a number of countries. In Guinea and Ivory Coast, leaders changed the constitution to add a 3rd term. Still, I think the fall is particularly severe in Benin. Guinea and Ivory Coast, while the decline in democracy is worrying, these were countries that had conflicts and challenges already. Benin really was quite a healthy democracy just 5 years ago, and the extent to which it's fallen, I think, is fairly unprecedented in the region.
Tim Herschel-Burns. Now, COVID-19 means there's no live audience this year, but the BAFTAs, the British Academy and Film Awards, will be handed out later today at the Royal Albert Hall in London. They're a curtain raiser, really, for the Oscars. And like the Oscars, the BAFTAs have vowed to do more to improve diversity. Vincent Dowd reports.
BC, but he's toured all over, and he's a poet. And as part of our conversation with Canadian poets and poets in general, we really wanted to introduce you to some of these people that seem to, as I was told by my buddy Forrest Black, to reorganize the dictionary in a way that changes our lives. And he's one. This is one of the guys who's done that. Now, Shane, we've chatted before, and I have
people to hear that. Where's that kid from Thailand talking nonsense?
Practical support when necessary. The biggest challenge he faces is convincing the farmers to change the way they've always done things.
We need to work with the farmers to identify problems together. We also need to work with them to find solutions. This process, taking into account the expertise and experience of the farmers and their families, helps them to learn new things. We must always factor in what the farmers know.
Protection through production, that's the motto of Bio Passos. Farming practices don't have to entail forest degradation. Some 1,200 farmers in the region have joined the initiative. Most of them are cattle farmers. Juan Pimentel still has a herd of cows, but he's also cultivating bananas and soursop trees on a section of his land. Even though it'll be 5 years before the fruit provides him with a solid income, he signed up with Bio Passos.
Oh, it's free trees.
People think we're crazy. They don't know why we're planting small trees when we won't even live to see them grow. But my wife and I hope that even if we never get to harvest the fruit, one day our children and our grandchildren will benefit. And they'll also benefit from improved air quality.
They're probably not free.
A year ago, Juan Pimentel's wife, Julieta, was one of several local women in the village Los Angeles to found their own cheese dairy, which they run as a cooperative. They all used to make cheese at home by themselves. Now they've joined forces.
Know you needed it until you really felt the absence of it. You know, it's like, I've always been kind of an introvert, you know, but I go.
I got a headline
their retirement goals. T. Rowe Price, invest with confidence.
Apple stuff. Here's what you should never.
Do you feel like you are a celebrity?
But to whom? Each week, join Nila Nyakoa.
What scary things with the Chinese government tell us today? Nothing, because it's not a business day. They tell us nothing. Everybody's putting the worst possible.
It's 5:30 GMT. This is weekend, and still to come, the whole AstraZeneca vaccination blood clot argument, where we stand, and why the effect on vaccine take-up could be huge still. And we hear from Germany about a group working hard to convince people that vaccines are a myth made up by the rich and powerful anyway. That's all on Weekend with me, Paul Henley, after this news.
BBC News. The Duke of Edinburgh's death on Friday has prompted prayers of remembrance at Sunday Church of its villages.
A tough day, the painting that brings you a sense of calm, the poem that, you know, like, I mean, relates something you didn't know you needed.
Plus-size modeling emerged as an alternative in some countries several decades ago. But in China, where standards of beauty remain rigidly tied to slimness, the trend towards using larger models did not appear until after.
win a 6th term as voters go to the polls in Chad today. President Idriss Deby, who seized power in a military coup in 1990, has been accused of stifling dissent in the lead-up to the vote. Presidential elections are also due to be held in the West African state of Benin. The incumbent, Patrice Talon, is expected to win a 2nd term. His critics have accused him of rigging the polls by disqualifying his strongest competitors. France is to increase the period between the 1st and 2nd doses of coronavirus mRNA vaccines as it ramps up the pace of its inoculation programme. The Health Minister, Olivier Véran, also told the Sunday newspaper that everyone over 55 would be offered the AstraZeneca vaccine. People in Kyrgyzstan are voting in a referendum to decide whether to move from a parliamentary to a presidential system. Critics have warned it will weaken government accountability, but supporters of the new president, Sadir Japarov, argue the move will bring greater stability. Emergency services in Western Australia have opened shelters ahead of tropical cyclone Saroja's expected landfall in the coming hours. Residents in the area north of Perth have been urged to evacuate. BBC News.
Sir Rogers, that is Roger. What did you call it?
Hello and welcome. You're listening to Weekend from the BBC World Service with me, Paul Henley, and let me introduce the 2 guests who'll be with me for the next 2 hours to give their perspectives on everything we feature. They are Rosamund Irwin, media and technology correspondent for the Sunday Times magazine here in the UK, and Kai Kupferschmidt in Berlin. He's a contributing correspondent for Science magazine. Welcome both. Now, Kai, by way of introduction, I hear you fell in love with science writing as a teenager in a bookshop in London. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. You know, my parents moved to London when I was 13, and I would spend the weekend kind of browsing the store at Waterstones around the corner, and they had this shelf called Popular Science, which we didn't really have in Germany. So there were all of these books by people, Richard Dawkins, Steven Pinker, people who were becoming big at that time. And I read it, and I just loved the idea of writing about, you know, science in this clear and accessible way. And so I kind of decided that probably being a science journalist would be the way to do it. And when I went back to Germany and finished school, I asked for advice from a journalist I knew, and he gave me a very good piece of advice. He said, you know, if you want to become a journalist, whatever you do, don't study journalism. Study something that you can actually write about. And so that was kind of exactly what I wanted to hear, and so I studied molecular biomedicine and went to journalism school afterwards. And I started at a little newspaper here in Berlin, and then we had a very big outbreak of a foodborne illness. And Science magazine, the editor, the European editor, knew me from a conference we'd been to, and he asked me to write about this. And so that's how I started writing for Science about infectious diseases, and that's basically what I've done ever since.
And it sounds like you're sort of pioneering popular science writing in Germany, as it's called, where it hasn't traditionally been a thing. What is popular science writing?
I mean, you know, it has been a thing. I just don't think it's ever been as big as it's been in the UK or in the US, for that matter. To me, it's really, if we look at the world today, it is so complex. I mean, you know, COVID-19 is one example. Climate change is another of you know, the complexity of these problems we face. And really, you know, writing about that in a clear and accessible way and trying to explain how we know what we know,
you didn't study journalism,
not just
you can
what we know.
talk about it all day and night, can't you?
Still time, get in on the sensational offer. Count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Bugs Bunny.
This situation. And, you know, we have this, you know, the new world of technology where we can, you know, we can reach out, we can do shows through groups like Side Door, you know, which is an app that's been doing amazing work to host, you know, sort of live concerts online. And stuff like that. But it's really hard for me. I've tried to do one, and it's just, you miss that electricity, and there's something being taken away, and it, you know, it's hard to do because everything becomes two-dimensional, and that's kind of the world we're living in right now. We can see each other, we can talk to each other, we can connect with each other, but everything's two-dimensional.
Because I was a model, so I sent them my pictures and business cards.
मलाई पढ्न किनभने भविष्यमा केही गरेर त खान सक्छु भनेर पढ्न मन लाग्छ
So I actually rather like going back to a place with a bit more nuance and actually where you make phone calls and do all the research. I think opinion writers sometimes could do with picking up the phone a bit more as other journalists
Just
do.
recently, all this has taken a bit of a back seat to other priorities in your life, though, hasn't it?
Yes, I'm on maternity leave at the moment. So I had a baby in December, and actually I found out I was pregnant on the first day that the UK went into lockdown. So the timing has not been amazing. But
Brought a few surprises for everyone concerned and a close brush with death for King and me. Be sure to hear this exciting adventure Wednesday. These radio dramas, a feature of the Challenge of the Yukon Incorporated, are created and produced by George W. Trendle, directed by Fred Flowerday, and supervised by Charles D. Livingston. The part of Sergeant Preston is played by Paul Sutton. They are brought to you every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at the same time by Quaker Puffed Wheat and Quaker Puffed Rice. The breakfast cereal shot from guns.
We're going to take all this stuff out today. Let's start censoring these videos.
Today, you are invited to a birthday celebration. The 4th birthday of the United Nations. And celebrate we may. For young as it is, the UN has already stopped 3 wars, played an important part in settling troubles that could have led to others. So let's make sure that there will be many, many more happy birthdays for the UN. Let's try to learn all we can about the UN. Your future, the future of the world, depends on making the UN work.
Was paranoid thinking at the time.
This is J. Michael wishing you goodbye, good luck, and good health from Quaker Puffed Wheat and Quaker Puffed Rice. So long. This is ABC, the American Broadcasting Company.
Should be offered an alternative. So Kai, the science behind these blood clots, first of all, perhaps you could explain exactly what scientists are worried about.
Sure. I mean, it's another example, you know, like everything in this pandemic, of how fast science is moving. I've been following the story with my colleague Gretchen Vogel since the first reports came out, you know, end of February, early March, of people, you know, having these serious side effects after getting the vaccine. And I think in the early days there was a bit of confusion because sometimes people just talk about blood clots when, you know, every doctor I talked to who was treating one of these patients was very clear that it was a very specific, you know, set of symptoms that they were seeing. So it was, you know, blood clots in kind of rare places, for instance, the cerebral vein, and thrombocytopenia, which means low platelet count. So something that normally you would expect is the opposite of clotting. And in the beginning, it was just a handful of cases. I think now in Europe, we're at 222 suspected cases. So the numbers have just grown a lot. And then, you know, at the same time, scientists have been investigating. And what they've come up with is basically something that's similar to a known syndrome. So there's something called heparin-induced thrombocytopenia, which can happen when, you know, heparin is given, the blood thinner, and it binds to something, to a part of the human clotting system, and then the immune system recognizes that, and it starts basically an autoimmune reaction against it. And what seems to be happening here, the consensus that's emerging, is that something similar is happening.
Might have another rare disorder on top of the one I got.
But just briefly, we wouldn't know about this tiny risk had not vast numbers of vaccines already been administered. Is that right?
That's exactly right. I mean, it's the kind of rare side effect. If you give you know, a vaccine to say 20,000 people in a big clinical trial, you're not going to pick up something that happens at a rate of about 1 in 100,000, which is what we're roughly looking at the moment. That's kind of the estimate.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what kind of impact is the blood clotting debate having on public trust? Let's hear first from Professor Andrew Pollard, Director of the Oxford Vaccine Programme.
We have to always set it absolutely in the context that
This pandemic that we're in the middle of at the moment has killed 120,000 people here in the UK. We will have further waves of disease in the year ahead. And we're talking here about, if it is connected, a vanishingly small risk of these blood clots against a very real risk to our health from this pandemic virus. So it's absolutely essential that confidence is maintained, because that's what's going to protect us from the devastating consequences of the virus, not only that is able to,
so you're going to try to tell us
fatalities,
the virus would have induced this response to even more people
cause long COVID,
and
affect our livelihoods.
Nevertheless, Rosamond, even very logical, highly informed people might have a slight hesitation before going to get an Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine right now, don't you?
Voice of Multicultural Toronto, bringing you the latest updates on COVID-19. Stay informed, stay safe, and stay tuned to Chin Radio AM 1540.
Synthetic resin or some shit. Non-metal, I can't claim that.
Now, as gunshots echo across the wind-swept, snow-covered reaches of the wild Northwest, Quaker Puffed Wheat and Quaker Puffed Rice, the breakfast cereal shot from...
belong to us. It belongs to children. Like every parent, I've tried to teach my children about the world, to share the values that I was taught as a child, to help my kids find their own passion and purpose in life, to help them learn what is right and what is wrong.
I live with paranoia, which is, you know, it sounds like such a cute thing to a lot of people. It's like, oh, you're paranoid. You know, it's kind of a nothing thing. But I don't think people take into account how
most people are
how crippling it can be, because what happens is your mind is creating narrative.
Never mind. Also,
what you look at, I mean, when Andrew Pollard says we have to kind of maintain confidence, the question is always confidence in what, right? Is it confidence in this particular vaccine?
Fuck, right, the vaccine's not going to help with the
Tomorrow,
variants,
make
right?
yours a breakfast delicious Quaker Puffed Wheat or
or
Quaker Puffed Rice with milk or cream and fruit.
You know what the hell's going on.
Quaker Puffed Wheat and Quaker Puffed Rice furnish added health benefits of restored natural grain amounts of vitamin B1, niacin, and iron. What's more, these ready-to-serve king-size kernels of premium wheat or rice are shot from guns to make them crisp and tender. They're delicious. Yes, try them. You'll say, here are breakfasts we like to eat. Quaker Puffed Rice and Quaker Puffed Wheat. Jack Madison and his father had gone to the Klondike with high hopes, but bad luck and hardship had dogged their activities. Their cash was nearly gone. Jack's father had become an invalid, and Jack himself had finally been forced to abandon work on his mine, the Klondike Queen. He didn't know that two men worked there secretly. Carslake and Peavy went into the mine night after night to work by lantern light. They were deepening a side tunnel.
Hold the light a little closer to the wall. Hey, Carslake, that rock looks different from the rest. Hold that light steady. There's color in there, see? Yeah, I see it. Well, what's it mean? Peavy, it means we've got gold. Carslake, you sure of it? You dead sure? Do you know anyone that savvies mineral better than I do? No, but I knew all along that Jack Madison's vein hadn't run out. I knew he would strike the mother lode if he'd kept going through the fall, but he didn't.
Nation effort. Perhaps it's not surprising in the highly competitive world of international pharmaceuticals that make an awful lot of money that the companies that make more expensive vaccines are gunning for this particular one.
Well, I've heard that a lot when I talk to people about the story. I really don't think that's what's happening here. You know, this is where it gets really, really complex, I think. But the early trials that AstraZeneca did sadly weren't as well executed or designed as some of the other trials, and that's kind of brought a lot of problems that we're still dealing with. And if you look at, I mean, obviously the risk from this side effect, if it is indeed a side effect of the vaccine, is very small, but how you deal with it depends so much on context. So, you know, in a country like Germany where you have other vaccines available, you know, even if it's a small risk, of course, it makes sense to avoid that risk by giving young people a different vaccine. In COVAX, of course, we're talking about a lot of countries that are not going to have access to any other vaccines. So I do think we need to think very carefully about what it is going to look like, that we will be vaccinating a lot of lower income countries with a vaccine, you know, and young people in those countries with a vaccine that we have deemed in our countries to, you know, that we'd rather avoid it and give a different vaccine for younger people because we feel the risk-benefit analysis, you know, suggests that's the right thing to do. So it's another example, I think, of the vaccine inequity that we're seeing in a play out in a lot of ways. But you know, the hope was that this vaccine would be the one that shows, you know, the good face in a sense of the global solidarity. And now it's just another example, I fear, where people are going to say, well, look, we're getting this vaccine, and you know, Kai Kupferschmidt in Germany isn't going to get that vaccine because it's not deemed a good vaccine for him.
And later on in the program, we're going to be talking to Bruce Aylward of the World Health Organization about the fact that the COVAX effort isn't going to plan. There are 14 countries that have yet to receive a single dose of the vaccination. That's not good, is it?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those situations.
Or it's, you know, another day to get through. There were days I didn't want to wake up. I'm not really sure that I'm explaining myself the best.
That's great. I think it's fantastic. I got to tell you. Well, how important is it to be with that? I mean, because you're speaking to the
disappointment.
Listen to us. Listen to the science. Imagine a better world.
This is a dialogue that shouldn't just happen here at COP. It must happen in the context of every country preparing their nationally determined contributions.
This is what plays in the elevators at the UN.
How can our countries fight against climate change? We need to bring the young kids, not just with passion, but with very crazy ideas to begin doing the change from the bottom up.
I believe you need to bring this feeling of solidarity and commitment into the rooms where the decisions are made.
I was worried for the next generation, for the children. But seeing you all in here, I'm not worried anymore.
Por eso es de suma importancia activar este tipo de mecanismos, pensando en la niñez, en la adolescencia y en las personas jóvenes de las zonas realmente vulnerables.
We need a strong public education system. That is the key of that problem.
If we cannot dissolve these differences and go over them, how are we going to solve the problem and the climate crisis?
Children, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the World Health Organization are speaking with one solid, clear, and compelling voice. What do we want? When do we want it? Thank you very much.
Had his chance. When Jack Madison investigated his mine, he found it just as he'd left it. All signs of recent digging had been removed. Carslake had been clever in concealing the work he'd done with Peavy. During the next few days, Jack saw nothing of the schemers. He dismissed them from his mind and devoted all his time and energy to panning the nearby stream for a meager existence. He didn't know that his enemies had left the community to lay plans for his death. On his regular route, Sergeant Preston and his great dog King came into the small community of Oxbow and stopped as usual at the home of his friend, Constable Dan Emery.
I've got something to show you, Sergeant.
Oh, what is it?
It's here.
Tobacco pouch?
Yep. But it's the heaviest tobacco you ever hefted. By the way, are you heading north from here?
Why?
In that case, you were elected to deliver this pouch. Here, lift it.
Heavy. Gold?
Yep. Nuggets.
What's the story behind it, Dan?
Well, it was left here by a stranger. He stopped here and asked for a meal.
The police are always passing on mysterious packages.
And we got to talking.
Wouldn't that be the best thing?
He asked me if I ever traveled north.
Ask him to deliver money for you.
Then he asked if I knew of anyone who was likely to be traveling north. I told him there was hardly...
Germany, and we live in the middle of Germany. And now with the lockdown, we couldn't go. So it's very sad for us.
Among the crowd of 20,000 people were supporters of the Querdenken movement. The English translation is lateral thinking. They're anti-lockdown, anti-vaccine, and some of them are even anti-mask.
Hier ist maskenfreie Zone. Wer krank ist, sollte besser nach. Nein, ich bin ja tolerant, ich versuche es auch, aber sorry, ich wurde gerade sehr extrem.
My German's not quite good enough to know what he was saying. Did he want me to take my mask off?
It's fine. Like, some people I just...
I got out before trouble kicked off, but the rally in Kassel later turned violent. Police and protesters clashed. It's not just adults like the ones I spoke to who are involved in the Querdenken movement. They're recruiting young people. Through an inside source who goes by the name Datenliebe, we gained access to a secret group. Datenliebe described what children and teenagers are discussing. We've had an actor voice his words because he's worried about his safety.
They say pretty clearly that they either don't think that corona exists or that the pandemic is not real. They say it's just a flu. They have a strong disbelief in state institutions.
The man behind the group is a charismatic former preacher named Samuel Eckert. Eckert runs a public channel for adults. It's one of the most popular German groups on the chat app Telegram. And children, some as young as 10 years old, are filtered into a private group. Experts say Eckert is preying on worried parents and grandparents, and that far-right sentiments are trickling down to the kids on Telegram. Mark Verhig is a journalist for Der Spiegel who's been following the Querdenken movement.
You can have two narratives. The one is fight for your own freedom. If you believe the government is doing you wrong and there's no real democracy and no real freedom of speech, then those mainly are right-wing extremists who say, okay, let's fight for your freedom. But on the other hand, you could also say, let's fight for our children, let's fight for their future, to give them a better life.
I tracked down the mother of two girls who are in Samuel Eckert's secret group for children. She tells me her daughters were kicked out of school for their anti-lockdown opinions.
This was, of course, also a traumatic experience, especially for the younger girl, because she was so well integrated in her class.
Like them, she also follows Samuel Eckert, but she says she's never forced them to follow in her footsteps.
We raised our children in a way, always asking them to question things, build their own opinion.
The Samuel Eckert Youngsters Telegram group now has more than 300 members. Datenliebe, our source, says he's seen stories of children getting bullied because of their association with Eckert.
He's trying all these different techniques to keep the kids very active and very involved in the group. I'm really concerned about it because those are real kids and they go to real schools and they feel physical pain from a false reality.
Samuel Eckert didn't respond to our request for comment, but he's not hiding the fact that he's recruiting children into his conspiratorial movement. At that rally in Kassel, he was live streaming online with COVID-skeptic children and teenagers by his side.
Jessica Bateman reporting. You can hear the full episode of the Anti-Vax Files on Trending this weekend here on the BBC World Service. Kai Kupferschmidt, let's get this in perspective. Germany's not up there among the most skeptical nations when it comes to the vaccine or to lockdown, is it? In general, do the public support tougher restrictions at the moment, even though politicians are loath to bring them in?
Yeah, I mean, there's a, the surveys show that roughly 2/3 of Germany think that either current restrictions are right or they should actually be stricter. So there's an overwhelming majority that basically, agrees with these measures. There's this very vocal minority, and I think it's actually maybe also led politicians to a somewhat skewed view of what to do. And one of the reasons we're doing fairly badly in this third wave in Germany, I think, is that we're not acting, decisively early on, and that's partly because of these protests, I think.
And lots been said about the German willingness to comply. Things are often rather better policed in Germany when it comes to rules about lockdown. Are Germans particularly good at doing what they're told in times of a pandemic?
It's really hard to know. I think, you have to remember that we haven't had a lockdown, in this whole pandemic that was anything close to what the UK has seen over the last few months. I think we're kind of almost a bit, pampered in a way, in the sense that we chafe at the restrictions that we've seen, but everybody should know that it can be a lot stricter, and it has been a lot stricter in other countries. I would make one point about these protests, though. I mean, it might be a bit controversial, but I do think in some ways it reminds me of seeing the Brexit debate play out in the UK, and that a lot of these peoples, what really animates them is this idea of going back to the way things were before. And what makes this debate so hard is that that's the one thing that's not really on the menu, right? I mean, either you have physical distancing, masks, and all of these measures, or you have an out-of-control pandemic, and that's the only two options we have, and that's kind of why this debate, why it's so hard sometimes to talk with these people, is that they want a third option that's just not available at the moment. Sadly.
Yeah, and some people, Rosamund, would say that's all a matter of opinion. There are plenty of people who insist the third option in the UK is available, and we should go back to entirely normal behaviour. It's a large minority that think that and have demonstrated in that cause, right?
I was sent to one of the early lockdown protests before really they sort of swelled in size. And of course, the argument you get there is that this is the flu. They don't believe in the pandemic. They don't believe that coronavirus is this great threat to life that we actually know it is. So they do think that there is a third way. They don't believe the NHS will be overwhelmed. And actually, I get sent things from contacts on other that I've worked with on other stories, so who aren't specialists in this sphere, where they say, but the media isn't telling the whole truth here. Nothing is as bad. So I do think there are, while in this country, in the UK, we have widespread support for lockdown measures, you do find it in a surprising range of people that they are at least skeptical about some of the claims, particularly statistical claims, the number of deaths and so on. I actually see that quite a lot from people I'd consider otherwise quite sensible.
If you're 20, you won't have seen deaths among people of your age, and you'll be quite aware that elderly people are dying in hospitals. You might find that it's so far from your experience that you're frankly sick of caring. If you're a 19-year-old healthy person not at risk,
well, I hope you might care about your grandma or somebody else that you do know of that age, or you might just care about society. But actually, one of the things I'd say that I noticed about the protest was actually that it was mostly older people there. It wasn't actually very young.
Thank you. This is Weekend on the BBC World Service. We're live from London.
You're listening to the All News Channel from KCRW. Stream us on iTunes, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, or on the KCRW mobile app.
Clients, look, we're getting through COVID-19 and we're going to get through the next crisis. Managing money is simple, but it's not easy. The not easy part requires process. It requires foresight. It requires guidance, and it requires a steady hand. And that's what Jack and I provide. Listen to our show and check us out at wolfgangklein.com.
Hey, Gugu, what do you tell a teenager about cannabis?
Off the bat.
Okay, I'm playing Haboot Cannabis. Music.
I don't know what the fuck that is.
BBC World Service, it's 6 hours GMT. This is Weekend. I'm Paul Henley. There have been prayers of remembrance at Sunday services for the Duke of Edinburgh. Prince Charles says the family is touched.
My dear Papa.
Radio 640 Toronto, of course, entertainment company.
This is Global News. I'm Safia Parani. COVID-19 cases continue to rise in the country's two most densely populated provinces. Ontario reported roughly 3,800 new cases Saturday, with hospitalization rates remaining high. These numbers come after the province issued emergency orders to address a major influx of patients requiring hospital and intensive care. Quebec, meanwhile, is reporting roughly 1,700 new cases and 13 deaths. More than 400 infections for a third consecutive day on Saturday were announced in Quebec City. Montreal reported a province high of 428. Meanwhile, over in British Columbia, supermarket chain Save-On-Foods has apologized after 10 customers at one of its Burnaby locations were given expired doses of a vaccine. The company says the doses of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine were administered on April 5th, but had an expiration date of the 2nd. Save-On-Foods says it began contacting the recipients as soon as it realized that error and disclosed it to relevant professional bodies. The company adds it has taken steps to refine its guidelines and procedures to prevent a repeat of such an error. A spokesman for Iran's civilian nuclear program says an accident has struck the electrical distribution grid of the country's Natanz nuclear facility without giving further details. Behruz Kamalbandi made the comment on Sunday, saying there were no injuries nor pollution caused by the incident. A mysterious explosion back in July damaged Natanz's advanced centrifuge facility. Iran had later called that incident a sabotage. Prince Charles says the royal family is deeply grateful for the outpour of support they've received following the death of Prince Philip. The heir to the throne made a deeply personal statement, saying his dear Papa was a very special person.
It sounds weird when he says it. It sounds even weirder when you quote him.
Is Damien McGuinness. This meeting of Germany's leading conservative politicians will be watched closely. There are just 5 months to go until the general election, but the Conservatives still haven't decided on their candidate to run as Chancellor. So MPs are getting nervous, and the pandemic is hitting the party hard. As infection rates rise here, the popularity of potential successors to Angela Merkel has slumped. Some are accused of missteps in their handling of the pandemic, and the failure of politicians to agree lockdown measures
there is stability and people are relatively happy.
People in Chad are voting in a presidential election that's expected to give one of Africa's longest-serving leaders a 6th term. President Idriss Déby, who seized power in a military coup in 1990, has been accused of stifling dissent in the lead-up to the vote. Paddy Maguire reports.
President Déby has ruled Chad for more than 30 years. Activists say he has no intention of relinquishing power in today's vote. Human Rights Watch has described a ruthless crackdown on key opponents and protesters in recent months. It says anti-government demonstrations have been met with brutal force. 4 opposition leaders, including Saleh Kebzabo, the runner-up in the 2016 presidential poll, have withdrawn from the race, alleging attacks by the security forces. They are urging their supporters to boycott the election and to take to the streets today instead.
World news from the BBC. Reports in the past hour from St. Vincent in the Caribbean say there's been another explosive event at La Soufrière volcano. There are reports of power cuts across the main island, residents reporting heavy ashfall. Earlier, the Prime Minister, Ralph Gonsalves, said water supplies had been cut on most of the island because of smoke after an eruption on Friday. Reports from Iran say there's been an incident at an underground facility used for uranium enrichment. Iranian news agencies quoted nuclear officials as saying there had been a problem with the electrics at the Natanz facility. They said there had been no injuries or leaks. India has registered another record increase in coronavirus infections, more than 150,000 cases in a day and over 800 deaths. Maharashtra, home to the country's financial centre, Mumbai, is the worst affected state. From Delhi, here's Rajini Vaidyanathan.
With coronavirus cases surging rapidly, officials here now face the dilemma of when and how to lock down certain parts of the country. Writing on Twitter, the top politician in Maharashtra, Chief Minister Uddhav Thackeray, said it was imperative strict restrictions are imposed for a period of time. He said planning was underway to ensure migrant workers who were hit hard in last year's national lockdown would be helped. Some in cities across India are already returning to their villages to escape the virus and to find work. The capital, Delhi, which is also seeing a rapid increase in cases, has announced more restrictions.
Moscow's Grand Yelizavetsky Food Emporium closes its doors today after 120 years. The food hall, which first opened before the Russian Revolution, is famous for its painted columns, chandeliers and wooden display cases, usually heaving with luxury goods. In Soviet times, the store was known as Gastronom No. 1, and even then managed to offer fine food unavailable elsewhere. BBC News.
Why did it close? What you didn't answer the important.
It's 6:06 GMT. This is Weekend. My name's Paul Henley, and joining me are two guests for the duration of the programme. Rosamund Irwin is media and technology correspondent for the...
Keep thinking, and some days are better than others. Some moments are better than others.
Broadway's biggest production, Les Miserables, Kinky Boots and Phantom of the Opera. Now they're looking for something new.
What was that second one? The fuck did you just...
I'm trying to look into industries that are actually hiring right now. Perhaps the medical fields.
Amazon, maybe UPS. I'm trying to think of anything that's hiring as well.
Trading the bright lights for...
Quite a small chunk of the world so far, and I'm rather excited about the world opening up.
No one
being able
knows.
to do a bit more.
No one quite knows the effect of very early influences on a child's life. Do you worry about that isolation?
King was waiting for that. He raced past the constable and Sergeant Preston, leaping beneath the gun and striking the water with overwhelming force.
First 2 minutes, last 2 minutes of the whole story.
All right, King, I have him covered. I had a hard time holding him. Jack Madison, you! You bet it's me. King and I were back watching.
Get up, baby.
Get out of my tunnel. It's our tunnel. We bought it. You bought it from my dad. It wasn't his to sell. I'm alive, so that deal is void. Now get out. You can't get away with this, Jack. You can't get away with it, I tell you. We'll fight this through the courts.
You'll have a fight in court, all right, Peavy. But you'll be fighting for your freedom. And you can't win. You can't win because Constable Emery and Jack Madison both witnessed the way you pulled a gun on me.
And if you ask me, Peavy, we can make that charge stick. Ah, that dog. If that dog hadn't come here, we'd have gotten all three of you.
If King hadn't been on hand, Peavy, we'd have used a different method. You couldn't win. Yes, King? The case is closed.
In just a moment, Sergeant Preston will give you a preview of Friday's adventure. Quaker pup wheat and...
Color Blue, which, just to put this in context, has got rave reviews. Sight magazine said...
Was nicknamed Sluggo. Walk in a room, own the room when he walked in the room.
He was big.
Yeah, and he just his nickname Sluggo, and that's the guy. And he coached internationally.
Fellas and girls, you too can help through your Red Cross. So give a dime, a quarter, or more if possible. Yes, get whatever you can to the 1949 Red Cross Fund. This year, thousands of boys and girls like yourselves will need help. I can't begin to tell you all the things the Red Cross does, like helping people in fire and flood areas, and in dozens of other fine services. So give through the Red Cross, the heart of America. These radio dramas, a feature of the Challenge of the Yukon Incorporated, are created and produced by George W. Trendle and directed by Fred Flowerday. This story was written by Fran Stryker. The part of Sergeant Preston is played by Paul Sutton. They are brought to you every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at the same time by Quaker Pup Wheat and Quaker Pup Rice, the breakfast cereal shot from guns. Listen Friday when Sergeant Preston and Yukon King meet the challenge of the Yukon in the Caribou case.
When a big dog tried to pick a fight, King turned tail and ran. When I finally learned the reason for what seemed to be a cowardly act, I realized that King's instincts were more reliable than the judgment of any man.
Be sure to hear this exciting adventure Friday. For a delicious hot breakfast, eat Quaker Oats. The giant of the cereals is Quaker Oats. Yes, the giant of the cereals is Quaker Oats. Delicious, nutritious, makes you feel ambitious. The giant of the cereals is Quaker Oats. Say, boys and girls, do you want to be a star someday in sports and activities? Then start on good Quaker Oats breakfast tomorrow. Because nourishing oatmeal gives you more growth and endurance than any other whole grain cereal. Still less.
Because we'd been told that Logan had been airlifted because he was one of the most severely injured people. We heard from the doctors that Logan had
This is J. Michael wishing you goodbye, good luck, and good health from Quaker Puffed Wheat and Quaker Puffed Rice. So long. This is ABC, the American Broadcasting Company.
Come on, Jack Benny. $90.
You're listening to Chin Radio AM 1540, the voice of multicultural Toronto, bringing you the latest updates on COVID-19. Stay informed, stay safe, and stay tuned to Chin Radio AM 1540.
Roma Wines presents Suspense. Roma Wines, made in California for enjoyment throughout the world. Salud. Your health, senor. Roma Wines toast the world. The wine for your table is Roma Wine, made in California for enjoyment throughout the world.
This is the Man in Black, here for the Roma Wine Company of Fresno, California, to introduce this weekly half hour of suspense. Tonight from Hollywood, Roma Wines bring you Miss Fay Bainter, Mr. Ralph Morgan, and Mr. Dane Clark in a suspense play dealing with a mother and a son and a lodger who kept an appointment with death. And so, with Life Ends at Midnight, and with the performances of Fay Bainter as Mrs. Bates, of Dane Clark as her son Walter, and of Ralph Morgan as Mr. Chalmers, we again hope to keep you in suspense.
Walter! Is that you, Walter?
That's right, Mom. It's your little sonny boy, Walter. You still remember my whistle, eh?
Oh, yes, I didn't know
You know what? I'll turn up, eh, Mom? What's the matter? We have to stand here in the hall?
Oh, no, come in. It's just, come in, Walter.
Well, it's the same old crummy joint.
I do my best to keep it clean, Walter.
Yeah, I know. Regular old Mother Hubbard. You have to clean up the whole south side before you get the magoo out of this flea bag. Oh, boy, am I tired. Up all night in the stinking day coach full of snoring jerks and squalling babies. Babies are the worst. All they do is bawl and slobber.
You left Pittsburgh last night?
1 in the morning, didn't sleep a wink. Yeah, look at my collar.
But tomorrow is Monday. You have to be at work in the morning.
Sure, What's the matter? You worried?
Oh, no, I just...
Don't just. Can't a guy come home and see his mother once in 6 months? That's a mother for you. You break your back, you sit up all night to see your mother for 1 day, and she tells you have to be at work in the morning. How do you like it?
Well, I'm sorry. I didn't miss you so. I just worried about...
Yeah, I know. Well, don't worry so much. It makes me nervous.
Here, sit at the table, dear. You must be starved.
Oh. All right. Now it's like coming home.
Oh, my baby. I'm so glad to see you. You did come just to see me, didn't you?
Who else? Hattie Lamar?
Well, of course you came to see me. It's just that I always worry so about you,
Yeah,
I mean.
forget it. Well, what's to eat?
I was just making a chop for my lunch. That's all there seems to be in the house right now.
That'll be enough for me.
It'll be ready in a minute. Now tell me about yourself, your job.
Never mind about me. How are you doing?
Well, I try not to complain, Walter. Things are not easy, prices high, rent's going up all the time, even on this old house. Honest, I don't know what I'm going to do if things don't...
You had some bonds Papa left you. You had about $2,000 bonds he left you. You still got
Well,
them?
I'm trying to tell you, Walter, things haven't been easy.
Always the poor mouth. Every time I see her, she's putting on a poor mouth.
I'm just saying things aren't easy.
And for me, do you think it's a picnic? I got enough trouble, and for what? For what? All year I work like crazy. For what?
A man must work, Walter.
A man must work, Walter.
Yes, that's true. A man must work and live like a person, and not be afraid so that he can sleep without worrying about...
About what?
About a bell ringing at night, or a knock on the door in the morning, or someone touching you on the arm. Yes, it's a nice feeling and a free feeling to be able to walk down the street in the sun with your eyes meeting another man's without wondering if he's...
Shut up, shut up! I ain't in trouble against her. Stop mouthing at me. You're always mouthing at me.
You haven't... You know what the judge said the last time, Walter? He was nice. Now he gave you another chance. He saw you were really a good boy, and he gave you another chance. He got you a nice job, and you promised to... You must... Oh, you're all right, Walter. You didn't...
Meatball. A herring on a plate all your life. You're a tomcat in the garbage. You find a fish head and you say, thank you, mister. You chew a fish good and you smile pretty. Well, not for me. You take a chance and you throw away the fish heads. You get one break and you're out of the garbage can for life. You throw a time clock to shiny pants. You're in a higher bracket so nobody gets you. Yeah, you're a mister with a future. You hold your nose when you walk from the day coach to your compartment. You leave the stinks behind in a pot of dusty air in front of you, and that's for me. One break. One break and you're as hot as a rocket shooting diamonds for sparks. You're a P-38 in a world full of flivvers. A buck gets you two gets you four. One for one blind to kicker and a kiss and a...
Walter!
It's all right. I took another chance. I tried to run it up. No dice. I gotta make it good. Tomorrow morning, I gotta make it good. The books at the office will show it, and I gotta make it good.
How much?
$1,500.
$1,500?
By midnight tonight, $1,500. If I miss that 12:20 for Pittsburgh, it's all up. I might as well take gas.
$1,500. By midnight tonight. Where am I going to get it, Walter?
The bonds. You got the bonds, Papa.
The bonds. How do you think I got you out of the last trouble? Bribes, bail, paying back every dime. Where do you think I got it?
I'll get 10 years. You heard the judge last time.
What can I do? What?
10 years and start. 10 years. There won't be no reform school this time. Please, Ma, please, get me the money. I'll get it for me. I'll be good. I'll work, give you no more trouble, but help me now. Please, Mama. Please, will you?
Where can I get it, Walter? Nothing left. Nothing.
I don't care where you get it. It's your fault. You gotta help me. I only wanted to help you.
Yes.
Now I'm gonna...
Yes. It is my fault. I've always protected you, but I can't protect you anymore. I'll give you the few dollars I have. Go away. It'll be enough to help you run away. That's all I can do.
You're holding out on me. You're worrying about your old age. You're making yourself a cushy little self.
I'm sorry. I hope I'm not intruding.
Who's this?
Oh, Mr. Chalmers. This is Mr. Chalmers, Walter. He has the back bedroom. This is my son, Walter, Mr. Chalmers.
How do you do, Mr. Bates? I feel that I know you very well. Your mother and I sit here in the kitchen sometimes over a cup of tea, and she talks about you for hours and hours. Yes, I can see why Mother is so proud of you. How do you do, Mr. Bates? Yes, you're a fine-looking young man. Mrs. Bates, if you'll excuse me, I'm just going to the corner for my paper. I think that little man with the tiny mustache, you know who I mean, the insurance agent, I think he might call again to collect. Please tell him to go away. You will do that for me, Mrs. Bates.
Yes, Mr. Chalmers.
Thank you, Mrs. Bates. Tell him not to come back anymore. I don't want to pay any more on the policy. You remember I told you my nephew was very sick in Spokane?
Yes, Mr. Chalmers.
Well, the poor young man passed away, yes. I was going to leave him a few dollars when I died. But now, well, I have no one left at all. And, well, $1 a week. You'll tell that to the little man with the tiny mustache?
Yes, Mr. Chalmers.
Thank you, Mrs. Bates. Good day, Mr. Bates.
Walter, I have $40 in the house for the rent. You can take that. Grab me a card when you get settled someplace. Let me know where you are. I'll send you some more as soon as I can get it. Maybe later I'll be able to straighten it out. Maybe later I'll be able to speak to your boss. I'll promise to pay back every dime, but you must go away. You must.
Tell me something about Mr. Chalmers. He interests me very strangely.
Walter!
Don't be so nervous, Ma. We got plenty of time. We got till midnight.
Tonight for Suspense, Roma Wines bring you as stars Fay Bainter, Ralph Morgan, and Dane Clark. You have heard them in the prologue to our suspense play this evening, Robert Tallman's story, Life Ends at Midnight. Before we return to the scene of our play, let us journey in fancy to Havana and sit at a table in the gay Restaurant Paris.
At the next table, we see perhaps a farewell party given for an American visitor. The American is wondering how he'll be able to repay in his own country the hospitality shown him in Cuba. Reassuringly, his Cuban host might remark, "Es muy fácil, amigo. Just be sure to serve wonderful Roma wine. It is wine imported by us from your own country. Roma wine." Indeed, Americans can well be proud that judges of fine wines in so many lands now acclaim the wines of California among the world's most enjoyable of all time. Of these truly superb wines, Roma wines are especially honored by the number of countries now importing them for enjoyment as rare luxuries. But Roma wines are not lacking in honors bestowed them here in America, because Roma wines are America's largest selling wines. If you aren't already one of the millions enjoying Roma wines regularly, as a delicious beverage anytime, to add sparkle to any meal, to smarten your entertaining, make your own taste test to choose your favorite, choosing from Roma wine's many different wine types. When you learn their modest cost here in America, with no import duty to pay, no expensive shipping charges to absorb, you'll know why we say Roma wines are for your daily enjoyment. I'll spell out the name for you. R-O-M-A, Roma wines, made in California for enjoyment throughout the world.
And now it is with pleasure that we bring back to our soundstage Fay Bainter, Ralph Morgan, and Dane Clark in Life Ends at Midnight, a tale well calculated to keep you in suspense.
Yes, I do think I'll have another cup if you don't mind, Mrs. Bates.
Now, Mr. Chalmers, suppose you look at it this way. You've been paying $1 a week for how many years now?
I'd say 20 years would be a conservative estimate.
All right, 20 years. Now, let's see, that's $50 a year. Say that's $1,000 you paid in, no?
Yes, $1,000. This coffee cake, Mrs. Bates, is excellent.
You like it? I made it yesterday when
the coffee cake. Now, let's figure percentage. How many more years do you figure to live?
Oh, that's all right, Mrs. Bates. After all, I'm an old man, and at my age, one rather, comes to terms with death. It's like the end of a long, busy day. Life ends at midnight, and a new day begins. Yes, Walter, I think you're on the verge of making a very profound observation.
Yeah, you see?
My policy is for $2,500. And in the days that are left to me, I certainly will not be required to pay in as much as I have already paid out.
That's the exact point. And if you drop it now, will you get anything back? No. You got a straight life with no cash in value. If you drop the policy now, the insurance company is the winner. But say you live another couple of years, you pay a couple hundred more, and you leave the $2,500 to somebody. Now, which is a smart thing? I leave it to you.
Yes, I should like to think that when I'm gone, I've left something behind for someone. Mr. Chalmers? Oh, yes, I'll always remember him for this. It's nice to live on in somebody's memory for a little while after we're dead. But A, I have no one in this world. And B, I must be very, very frank and tell you that I can no longer afford to pay even the $1 a week. You see, I live on a...
That's a problem of the most minor importance. For anybody who invests in you now $1 a week would be gilt edged. I mean, for instance, well, take my mother here. Now, suppose you made her the beneficiary. Now, suppose she continued to pay the $1 a week. Who can lose on such a deal? Who can lose? Nobody. You get the point?
Oh, no, I couldn't. Why,
Why not? It's simple, huh?
No, Mr. Chalmers, no, you mustn't.
Let Mr. Chalmers aside. Huh, Mr. Chalmers? It makes good sense, no? Makes everybody happy, no?
But we're practically strangers. We just...
What do you mean, strangers? Who's a stranger in this world? We're just little people trying to make each other happy. Huh, Mr. Chalmers? Now, Mr. Chalmers here can die feeling he didn't waste $1 a week for 20 years, and he'll know he'll live in your memory. That's what he wants. Now, why shouldn't he have it? Ain't every man entitled to at least live in somebody's memory?
Yes, but Mr. Chalmers doesn't have to do that. I'll think about him anyway. I promise I will. He don't have...
Let him say something. You're always mounting. Now, what do you say, Mr. Chalmers?
Oh, that must be the little man with the tiny mustache. I'll tell him I'm keeping the policy and changing the beneficiary. Oh, could you let me have the loan of $1, Mr. Bates?
Hey, hurry it up, will you? The old man's coming home in a minute or two. He takes his nap about this time. I want this ready for him.
Oh, relax, Sonny, relax. I can't finish this job today.
What are you giving me?
I'll take a joint and another length of pie.
I'll fix it up. You're a good plumber. You can fix it up for now.
Yeah, the room's pretty small. Why do you want the heater so close to the bed, Frank?
Like I told you, he's got rheumatism. He needs plenty of heat.
Well, I can run a rubber extension, but with gas, I don't like it.
Okay, so with gas, you don't like it, but with gas, we gotta run his heater. The old man's got rheumatics. He can take plenty of gas.
Huh?
The heat, I mean. He needs plenty. What are you doing now?
Tighten this joint.
Look, it's tight enough. Here's your $3 and...
Okay, you're the boss.
Bring your tools the next time.
I won't be in here next time, Sonny.
What are you giving me now?
You can get somebody else to do your dirty work after this. So long, Skippy.
Skippy? Well, come on, Skippy. Pull yourself together. We got work to do. Hiya, Pop.
Well, this is a pleasant surprise.
Yeah, this used to be my room. The steam don't come up here so good, so I talked the old lady into fixing this up for you.
Well, that was very thoughtful of you, Walter.
Thanks. I stuffed up the cracks in the window, too. 0 weather. It gets plenty of drafty in this room.
You thought of everything, didn't you, Walter?
Huh? Yeah, it ought to work out just fine.
It'll do the job, I think. I'm going to take a little nap before dinner. Do you think the heater...
Just leave it on. I'll look in after a bit to see if it's okay.
Well, now, you needn't go to all that trouble.
No, it's no trouble at all, Mr. Chalmers. When I do a thing, I like to do it right.
Who's there? Is that you, Walter?
Yeah, go on back to sleep, Pop. I'm just turning the heater off. It's getting stuffy in here.
Oh, you're a good, considerate boy, Walter.
Oh, skip it. Go on back to sleep.
Please don't walk so fast, Walter. My feet are hurting me again.
You can buy new shoes tomorrow.
I'd like to know what with.
Maybe you'll have dough tomorrow. Maybe we'll both have some dough.
If a miracle happened.
Maybe miracles do happen. Maybe if you're smart.
Where are you taking me to, Walter?
Nowhere in particular. I thought we'd stroll around the old neighborhood, like old times.
Oh, that's a nice idea, Walter. But my feet...
Hello, Mrs. Bates.
Good evening, Officer Flanagan. This is my son, Walter. He's just here from Pittsburgh.
Glad to know you.
How's business, Copper? Oh, much the same. Vagrancy, petty larceny, once in a while, suicide. Suicide? Yeah, that's what they start out to do, but it's harder to get bumped off than most people think. Huh? Case just last week over in the next precinct. Dame turned on the gas in her room and lay down on the bed. What happened? Nothing. They always bungle somewhere. Amateurs. Gas petered out. She forgot to put a quarter in the meter. 7 o'clock. I got a call in. Well, good night, Mr. Bates.
Good night, officer.
Nice to meet you, Walter. Ma,
Yes, Walter.
when did you put a quarter in the meter at home?
Why, I don't remember. Goodness, I'd better get some change.
Never mind the change. Come on.
Walter, why did you ask about the gas meter?
What do you think?
Walter, you didn't. That isn't why you put the heater in, Mr. Chalmers.
What do you think?
I don't think anything. I just pray that quarter ran out.
Save your
before.
prayers. Because if that didn't work, I'll try another way. Either that old cluck is dead before midnight, or I spend 10 years in stir. He's going to be dead before midnight, see? And if you try to make any trouble, you'll be pushing daisies right along with him. Stop sniveling. We're going in there now. Look, if the toke, scream your head off, or I'll give you a reason to scream.
Gas. I can smell it.
Come on.
Well, good evening, Walter and Mrs. Bates. I was just on my way out.
Oh, Mr. Chalmers, you're all right. You're all right.
Of course he's all right. What's eating you?
I have a slight headache, it's true, but a brisk walk in the open air will cure that, I'm sure.
Hey! Oh, you look at this.
What is it, Walter?
Well, this hose on a heater. You got unhitched. No wonder you got a headache.
I thought I smelled gas.
Boy, it's lucky for you Ma forgot to put a quarter in the meter.
Providence works in strange ways, doesn't it, Walter? Well, I must be getting on. I'll be coming home rather late, Mrs. Bates, so I'll just let myself in.
How late?
Well, I thought I'd stop at the neighborhood picture house for dinner. That'll be around 9 o'clock. So I imagine I won't be home much before 11.
Mr. Chalmers, there's something I wanted to...
Yes, Mrs. Bates.
Walter's a good boy at heart, you know, but he's been in some trouble lately, and...
Is there anything I can do to help, Walter?
Yeah, plenty. I'll tell you all about it when you get back. Come on, you better run along now, Mr. Chalmers. You don't want to be late for that picture.
Yes, of course. Well, good night, Mrs. Bates.
Mr. Chalmers,
Good night, Mr. Chalmers.
Yes, good night.
Oh, Walter, Walter, no! No, my book, no!
You were going to tell him, weren't you? You would like to send me to the chair, wouldn't you?
You struck me, Walter. You struck your own mother.
I ought to have messed up your sad, mucky-faced foot.
Oh,
It's your fault I brought us up in the first place. Why didn't you remember to put a quarter in that meter? Why didn't you?
I'm glad I forgot. He wouldn't be alive.
I shouldn't have messed around with gas, trying to spare your feelings, making you look like an accident.
Oh, no.
The thanks I get for it. She wants to blab the whole thing, turn me in, my own mother.
No, Walter, no, that's not true.
Why, you...
But don't strike me again, Walter. I can't stand it.
Okay. Maybe now you'll cooperate. Now look, let's put it this way. It's either you or him. If it's you, I don't care whether they get me or not. Are you listening?
Oh, yes, Walter.
Okay, now like I said, I got very little time to get this thing done. I ought to have done it neat and clean in the first place, like I said. He's old and weak. You just push him over on a bed, hold a pillow over his face for a few minutes, and the job's done. Nobody will ask any questions, a guy that old.
Walter, for the last time, I'm begging.
Okay, make sure it's for the last time. Remember, it's you or him, like I said.
What are you going to do?
Now look, I'll be waiting in his room when he comes home. I'm shot anyway, so I'll lay down and get 40 winks. You wait up for him. Tell him I've left to catch a train. That's in case he suspects anything. When he comes to his room, I'll take care of the rest of it.
How do you know I won't warn him?
Because it's him or you, like I told you. I don't think you'll warn Mr. Chalmers. And don't try to stall him when he comes in. He's got to be dead by midnight. Or else.
Get the evening paper here. Oh, evening, Mr. Chalmers. Evening, Joe. I'll have the late edition of the Daily News as usual. Oh, I saved one out for you, Mr. Chalmers. Thank you. Good night, Joe. Good night. Oh, by the way, Joe, I almost forgot. Can you give me the change of $1? Oh, sure, Mr. Chalmers. Yes, here you are. 50, 75, 85, 90, $1. Well, thank you. I just happened to think of something I need change for. A little good deed for a friend of mine. Oh, Mr. Chalmers. Well, I didn't think you'd be up so late, Mrs. Bates. I waited up especially. I wanted to talk to you about Walter. Mrs. Bates, your eye, it's all discolored. Yes, the light burned out in the bathroom, and when I went to replace it in the dark, that is, I bumped into the door. Now, I would have thought Walter would have done that for you. Oh, no, Walter didn't. I mean, Walter's left already. He had to catch the 12:20 for Pittsburgh, you know. But it's only 11 now. The clock. Perhaps he had some things to do on the way, I mean. Of course. Well, I'm afraid I must be getting on to bed. No, not just yet. I mean, won't you sit down for a minute and have a cup of tea with me? Well, I'd like to, but tea keeps me awake, Mrs. Bates. I'll be getting along to my room now, if you don't mind. No, don't go into that room, Mr. Chalmers. Why, Mrs. Bates, whatever's the trouble? My son, Walter, there's something I must tell you. Forgive me, Mrs. Bates, but I'm an old man and I need my rest. If it could possibly wait until morning. No, it can't wait until morning. It's got to be told before midnight. What was that? Sounds like someone moving about in the back of the house. One of the shutters, it's loose. The wind. Oh, you were saying, Mrs. Bates? Nothing. I can't tell you after all. I'm afraid. I'm afraid to tell it. Afraid. There, Mrs. Bates. Perhaps in the morning. Try to get some rest. You're going in there now? I think that will be the best thing to do all the way around. Don't you, Mrs. Bates? Good night. No, wait. Mrs. Bates, what is it, Mrs. Bates? That smell. Gas. Walter! Why don't you lie down for a few minutes, Mrs. Bates? I'll call you when the ambulance arrives. Listen. It's striking 12. Dead before midnight. That's what he said. Dead before midnight. Poor lad. Fell asleep. If only I hadn't remembered to go back for that change. You did it. You put the quarter in the meter. That's what turned on the gas that killed him. Well, you mentioned the gas having gone off and forgetting to put a quarter in the meter. So on the way to the picture house, I just went around to the back entry and dropped the coin. I suppose I should have remembered about the connection being loose on the heater in my room. But I wanted to surprise you with my good deed. I didn't mean to do anything wrong, Mrs. Bates. Truly, I didn't. No. You didn't do anything wrong, Mr. Chalmers. You didn't do anything wrong.
And so closes Life Ends at Midnight, starring Faye Bainter, Ralph Morgan, and Dane Clark. Tonight's tale of suspense.
Miss Bainter appeared by courtesy of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, producers of Madame Curie. Dane Clark is currently being seen in the Warner Brothers production Destination Tokyo. Before Ralph Morgan returns to our microphone, let me give you a suggestion. The suggestion you will find can add to the success of your next dinner party at home. At one end of the dining table, place a bottle of Roma wines, not sweet, not dry, Burgundy. At the other table end, place a bottle of Roma wines. You'll know that whatever the individual choice of a guest.
Are you okay with beauty pageants?
No. Beauty pageants are awful. They're terrible. They're run by horrible people. I hate them. I absolutely hate them.
Well, that's how you really feel.
Sorry, I could pop off on them. It's not the people who are in them that are the problem. It's everything around them and why they exist. I'm triggered. I'm going, okay, all right.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there. I'm not gonna, protest them or anything like that, but it's just not my idea of beauty, I guess.
This is Ralph Morgan. First, I'm sure I speak for all of us, Miss Bainter, Mr. Clark, and myself, in saying how much we've enjoyed appearing on Suspense this evening. We will all be listening, as we hope you will, next week when Miss Agnes Moorehead is your star in one of the most talked about plays ever to be presented in this series, called Sorry, Wrong Number. And now one more word. Here's something our fighting men may never forget. The price of victory is sacrifice. You help bring the victory nearer when you make the sacrifices that make it possible for you to buy more war bonds.
Oh, dear.
Thank you.
Suspense is produced and directed by William Spear. Don't forget then, next Monday for Agnes Moorehead in Suspense.
Presented by Roma Wines, R-O-M-A, made in California for enjoyment throughout the world. This is CBS, the
Beta at this point?
Well, we do actually have quite a lot of data at this point, partly because of how the USA and Israel sort of decided to say, actually, there's a very, very small theoretical risk from the vaccines, and we know that there's a risk from COVID, so we're actually going to offer it anyway. So there are actually 79,000 pregnant people in the United States who have now received the vaccine, and they're all being, looked at quite closely, of course. So we haven't. Aloha,